Hello there and welcome to Data Science Raw TV with me, Gary Short. This is episode 2, the one about COVID-19 testing. So let's get started then. In this episode, I want to look at the following two questions. And that is, looking at the amount of testing we're doing and using Denmark as an exemplar, as a lot of the commentators want to do. One, was England correct to postpone the remainder of their schools going back until September? And two, is Scotland ready for their schools to go back on August the 11th? So let's take a look at the data. First of all, we're going to set up a little function here just to allow us to read data from the internet. And this is the source that we're going to use here. We're going to pull back some testing observations. These are global testing observations from lots of countries all over the world. You can pick them up from that source there if you want to follow along at home. Once we pull that URL from the internet and we have a look at the columns, we can see there's a bunch of useful features here in this data set. There's entity, the date, the cumulative total, daily change in cumulative total, the cumulative change, the cumulative total per thousand, and that's going to be a useful measure for us because we know we can't compare absolute numbers from country to country. We have to proportion that across the population, so that's going to be good for us. What isn't immediately available here or immediately obvious here is what the countries are and what the test types are. So let's dig a little bit deeper into that. If we have a look at the entity feature, we can see that the entity really is a composite of the country and the type of test. So here we can see there's Argentina, there's Australia, there's Austria, Bahrain, Bangladesh. There's, in terms of testing, there's test performed, units are unclear, samples tested, that kind of stuff. So what we want to do is we want to go ahead and we want to split these two up. And we want to create two new features, one just with country in it and one just with test type. So that's what that code there will do. That will take the entity, it'll pull out the country, it'll pull out the test type, and it'll add that to the data set. Now that we've done that, let's have a look to see if we've got the countries that we actually need. What we actually want to be able to compare is Denmark with Scotland and England in order to answer our questions. So have a quick look at that. We can see we only have Denmark and the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom's numbers aren't really any use to us, but Denmark is, so that's fine. So we'll go ahead and let's shape up the Danish data in the way that we want it. So what we want to see is we want to see country, we want to see the dates, and we want to see these tests per thousand. And that's really all the data that we need if we're going to compare like from like across countries. So let's grab that data. Now we need to get a hold of the English data, and if we go to the Office of National Statistics website, in fact, if we go to this source here, we can pull back testing for all of the UK. So we're just going to grab that URL there. Again, if you want to follow along at home, you can grab that source and we can pull back that data from the internet. And here what we get, again, is some useful information. So we get the date of the activity, the date of reporting, we get nation, and we get the pillar. Again, cumulative number of tests, number of people tested, number of positive cases. We may do another analysis in the future about number of positive cases versus tests and all of that kind of stuff. But right now, we just want to look at the amount of testing that's being done. So here, along with the date, we're interested really in two main features here. One is the nation, which we'll be able to pick up the country, and the other one here is pillar, which actually tells us the type of testing that's being done. So if we go ahead and pull that out, actually we want the nation as England, and we want pillar 1, which is actual number of tests carried out. We could pull Scotland out here as well, but Scotland have their own data at the National Records of Scotland, the NRS site, and those are the ones that we're going to use because I think these are probably more accurate. So what we're doing here is we're just shaping the data so it's the same as the Danish data that we had. So we need the country as England, we need the date, and we need that tests per thousand number as well. Now, the test per thousand number we don't have in this data set, so we just have to calculate that, which is a very straightforward calculation. We just take the daily number of tests and divide it by the number of thousands of population that we have. Having a quick look at this data set, we can see that the date feature is in a different format than what we had in the Danish data, so we just need to quickly correct that. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up a little function here which will take the string in the format that it is now, and it will return it in the format year-month-day. Once we've created that function, I should say, we just need to run that function against the date. We just need to apply it against all dates there, and we can see now in that little sample there that we have the date in the right format, which matches the Danish data that we've already got. So as I said, we're going to pull the Scottish data from the Scottish equivalent site to the Office of National Statistics, which is the NRS site. Here in this particular source, if you want to pull that, you can play along at home. Scotland make life a little bit harder because this is an Excel spreadsheet, and this Excel spreadsheet has all of the data in it. And testing is just one page within that. So what I've done is I've pulled that page out and saved it as a CSV file. Here you can see I've just saved it as Scottish testing.csv, and we're going to load that data in. If we have a quick look at that data, the columns, the features that are in there, we can see there's the date, there's the NHS daily, there's the NHS cumulative, the RTC daily, and the RTC cumulative. Just a quick word on the difference between the NHS and the RTC. So any NHS values is testing done by the Scottish NHS in Scotland for Scotland. Where you see RTC, that's regional testing centres, that's where that's testing done on Scotland's behalf by the UK. So we, as a member nation of the United Kingdom, Scotland benefits from the pooling and sharing there, and around 30% of our testing is done by the UK in these RTC regional testing centres. So that's the difference there between these two numbers. And obviously, if you add daily RTC with daily NHS, then you get the total daily number of tests carried out. So we're just going to shape that data again. So you can see there, if we want the daily tests, we simply add the NHS daily and the RTC daily to get the total number of daily tests. And again, we have to create this tests per thousand measure so that we can compare country to country. Again, that doesn't appear in the data set as it is, but we can simply calculate that by taking the daily number of tests that we've already calculated and dividing that by the number of thousands in the population. And again, we get country, date, and tests per thousand, the same as the Danish data and the same as the English data that we pulled out before. So now that we've got all of our data together and we've got it shaped in exactly the same way, now we can append it all together, and we can see now we have data for Denmark, England, and Scotland all together. So now that we've done that and we've done our data engineering, we've got it all shaped up nicely, now we can go ahead and have a look at it. And all I'm going to do here is to create a little function which just makes creating graphs a little bit more straightforward. Once we've done that, we're going to use it to look at the data here. So what we're looking here at this data is the daily tests per thousand from the 15th of April right through to the most current day that we've got data for, which is the 13th of June. The reason we've started at the 15th of April is that's when Denmark started to open up their schools. So that's why we've picked that one. Here we're looking at the number of tests per thousand by day. And as you can see, it jumps around a lot, which makes it kind of difficult to have a look at and kind of difficult to compare. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to take a weekly average. So we're going to take a rolling 7-day window across the daily tests, and we're going to create a feature in our data set called smooth tests. That's going to be the average of 7 days, and that should smooth that out a little bit to make comparisons a bit more straightforward. And as you can see, once we've done that, it's a little bit easier to read. So there's a number of things to look at this on this data set. But before we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of lines to this data just to make things a little bit easier to have a look at. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the number of daily tests per thousand that Denmark was doing on the day that they started their school's opening program. So the day they started to roll out their school's opening program, how many tests per thousand of population were they doing? The next line that I'm going to pull out, the next measure that I'm going to pull out is what is the mean number of daily tests from April the 30th. So that was 2 weeks after they started to roll out their program. So once the program was complete and all schools in Denmark was open, what was the level of testing that they were doing then? So you can see on the day that they started the program, the number of tests per thousand was 0.57. And once the program was complete and the schools were open, the number of daily tests that they were doing per thousand of population was 2.15. So I'm just going to add those as lines on the graph because they give us a bit of information to work to, and it just makes it a little bit easier on the eyes. So number of things to look at here. We can see at the extreme left-hand side of the graph, we see on the 15th of April, when Denmark there in the blue opened their schools, you can see over the next 2 weeks to around the 30th of April, they had a massive increase in their testing. They really ramped that up from 0.57 to 2.15 there. The next thing to look at is if we look at England in the orange, England is well below the line where Denmark was when they opened their schools. Even though England started to roll out an opening of their primary schools around the 1st of June there, you can see if you look at the 1st of June date, you can see that England there in the orange is quite a bit below where Denmark were even on the first day before they started to ramp up. You can see there's a small ramp up in testing that goes from the 1st of June towards the 13th of June, which is the date we've got now. That's just a slight increase, but even with that slight increase, England are still below the level that Denmark were on the day that they started their program. If we look at Scotland in the grey, we can see that right now, as we stand, Scotland is a little bit above where Denmark were when they opened. And when Denmark opened, so Scotland right now are a little bit above there, but you can see that Scotland are a long way off that 2.15 mark where Denmark got to as it completed its school's opening program. So England, long way to go to meet the kind of gold standard of Denmark. Scotland, long way to go as well, but at least at the minute we are above the level that Denmark were when they started to roll out the program. So the question is, since we have until August the 11th to kind of catch up here in Scotland, can we get to that required level? So if we have a look at the data here and we have a look at that NHS daily, RTC daily tests and tests per thousand, if we have a look just at that mean line there, we can see that really our mean line is 0.7 tests per thousand per day, which is, as I said, above where Denmark was, but that represents 26% of our capacity. So around the 14th of May, the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, announced that the capacity for testing in Scotland is 15,500 per day. And that 0.7 tests per person daily actually is only about 26% of our capacity. Now, to get to the 2.15 tests per thousand per day, we'd have to be at about 76% of our capacity, or 11,726 tests. So if you look again along that mean line at the daily tests, right now our daily tests stand at 4,068, which is made up of 2,831 from the NHS and 1,238, or around 30%, provided by the UK through the regional testing centres. Now, where we have to get to between those two, so between what Scotland can do on its own through the NHS and what Scotland can do through pooling and sharing with the UK through the RTCs, we have to get that 4,068 number up to 11,726, or as I say, moving from 26% of our capacity up to 76% of our capacity, in order to be able to match what Denmark were doing when they rolled out their schools program. So what's our growth like? Are we actually trying to get there? So this function here at the top, what that'll do is it basically calculates the rate of change one day to the other. So if you have a look at the graph, you can see the daily change on the y-axis. You can see where the bars are above zero, that's acceleration in the number of tests, and where the bars are below the zero, that is deceleration or less tests. And as you can see, if you kind of roughly with your eye kind of move all the bars to one side, you can see that basically cancels each other out. We've basically been steady at the 0.7 tests per thousand mark now for about the last 6 or so weeks. So there's really no sign, although the First Minister has announced that we will be opening our schools on August 11th, there's really no sign that the testing is ramping up, and that's something that we need to get working on as a priority now. It's June the 15th now. We're due to open our schools on August the 11th, so we have a couple of months. I don't think this is something that you can just throw together overnight. We really need to start ramping up our tests now and get that moved from the around 4,000 to the around 11,000 that we need. So, in conclusion then, if we remember our questions from the start, we can absolutely say yes, England were correct to postpone opening any more schools beyond those that they already did on June the 1st. As I said, commentators seem to hold Denmark as being the gold standard in this area, and England are quite a bit below where Denmark were even when Denmark started to roll out their school opening program. So absolutely correct for England to postpone those openings now until September, and to ramp up that testing to that 2.15 tests per thousand as well. With regard to Scotland, Scotland are a little ahead of where Sweden were when they opened their schools, so that's great. But Sweden really ramped up their testing as they rolled out their schools opening program. And as I said, we need to move our capacity from 26% of our, we need to up our actual testing utilization from 26% of our capacity to 76% of our capacity. And unfortunately, at this moment, there's no sign of that happening. So it's up to the Scottish Government to really pull the finger out there and get cracking. Okay, that's it for this episode. Hit like and subscribe if you want to catch any more of these applied data science videos. And until the next time, goodbye.